All right, let's get our other Facebook groups in here before it's officially time to go. And we are waiting on that. Boom. And boom, there we go. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. It is the 2nd of May, and it's time for an episode of Building the Broncos. I am Nick Kendell, and joined by, as always, on Tuesday nights, Carl Dumler. Carl, how you doing? Happy belated birthday to you, chat. Drop a happy birthday into the chat for Carl. Just turned, what was it, 35, 36, something down there. Just a little bit older than me, right?
Somewhere around there, yeah. We'll
Yeah.
just say there. No, 37, feeling good for 37, I guess you could say. No real big pains and gotten back into running. So I'm feeling actually pretty good and getting in shape and all that fun stuff. So no, doing well. Just finished up soccer season with the kids. Finished on a nice victory. And kids played pretty darn good, actually. One of their best games of the season. Other team was like a foot taller on a lot of their players, and our guys were just like, nope, we don't care. We're going to go dominate. And they did. So good way to end the season and now get into all the summer with golf and hiking and all the good times.
Fishing, all the good. Yeah, you're definitely a golfer. That's not really my bag, but it's going to be nice here soon. Unfortunately, it was beautiful during the draft when I was on, and then now it's cold and wet again. It's nice out there today, but I'll hopefully get outside after we're done with the show here today. But yeah, welcome in, everybody. I hope everyone's doing well. We got our guy David Youngkin coming in here saying Bronco country, hashtag Buckham. Everyone is on notice. We will see the best players play. If this is the rookies, that's fine. Yeah, that's one thing that I feel like I've taken away from Sean Payton is that he doesn't care what contract you signed or what draft pick you were or what you've done or anything, kind of fresh slate for everybody. Obviously, just the nature of the beast. Maybe this isn't even just, maybe it's not like favoritism because he signed the guys, but like it's the other way around. Like the guys that he liked, he signed. So he's going to have favoritism to the guys that he picked, right? It's not because he picked them, but because he liked them. So he picked them, like if that makes sense. It's on the front end of the selection bias, not the back end. But what do you think about Sean Payton's, kind of thoughts on just doesn't give a hoot where you come from? I mean, it's a little bit old school, but maybe needed for this team.
Well, I mean, I like it if it's really true.
Yeah.
A guy can say a lot of things. And, I worry about that a little bit more with Vance Joseph because we saw down there in Arizona and even here in Denver, playing rookies wasn't really at the top of his list.
Yeah.
And we saw some struggles for them to get onto the field and be able to develop. And a lot of times it's kind of that fourth year where they're all of a sudden finally finding the field. So you get like 1 year of kind of production and then you got to pay them. You got to figure out who they are in that kind of time. And so I'm hoping it's not quite like that here in Denver where some of these guys can get more of a chance early on. And I think they will just because one, depth at a couple of the positions, like they're going to find a way onto the field. It's just going to happen whether Vance Joseph likes it or not. But yeah, like I said, if it's really true that best player plays, I'm all for it because that's how it should be. I don't care how much you're making. If you're the top paid player and somebody outplays you, like if Jarrett Stidham outplays Russell Wilson, I don't have any problem with him starting. I mean, I know that most of the media and everybody else would be going crazy, but still, like to me, like if he's your best player that's going to give you the best chance to go out there and win, get that guy on the field.
Yeah, Buckham, in the words of many of our listeners on here. I agree with you. One thing I will also say, just to add to the point, is that I think a lot of times, when there's more power structure with the front office, they are like, we got this guy a third round. We gave this guy a big contract. He needs to get on the field. The coaching staff, as much as, and I believe in Denver, coaching staff is very much driving this bus, is that, no, I mean, I don't care if he was a second round pick last year. Nick Bonito, it doesn't fit what we want to do and culture or whatever, he's gone. It's just an example there, but something like that where it's like, doesn't matter what they've done, where they're at. But yeah, David, good question coming in here. We appreciate you. We got our guy, David McElrath, coming in. Hope you had a good draft weekend, David. David popped in a few times on Thursday, I believe, but good to see you. Otherwise known as Papa Bear. Said good evening, Broncos country. Nick, Carl, Dylan, and Deacon Scott. Buckham, MHH for life, and Denver Broncos for life. Good to see you, David. Thank you so much for the $5 super. We hope you're doing well. And that reminds me, Chad has kind of gotten, not on my case, hasn't said to me directly, but I need to put that ticker on there underneath about going on the chat. There we go. Super chats on YouTube. Help support us. Help support the show. We appreciate that. Be like David. You guys are great. David, you're great too. Hope you're doing well. Some more hellos in here. Some stars coming in from one of our stars, Phil McLaughlin, saying good evening. Carl, Nick, and Deacon Scott. I read we are bringing in an XFL player. Any comments on him? So I think it's 2 XFL players,
Yep.
actually.
One on
Carl,
each side.
can you give me some information on these guys?
So we got a running back the Broncos brought in. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head on his name. I think Jaleel McLaughlin. Is that right?
No.
I think is what his name is. But anyway, is that not him? Okay.
It's
anyway,
Jacques Patrick.
They brought
It's
in the
Jacques
guy.
Patrick. Jacques
Okay.
Patrick.
He was, I think, second in rushing and was the number 1 receiving running back in XFL this past season. Now it's obviously a very shortened season and going against a lot lower competition. I mean, you can make maybe the argument that it's lower than college level.
It depends on the conference, but yeah, probably.
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking SEC, I think there'd be an argument there for sure. Maybe Big Ten.
Thank
East.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But beyond that, has some receiving ability. Obviously, a bigger running back. I think he weighs about 230 pounds. So it'll be interesting to see what the Broncos can do with him. And then they brought in the number 1 pass rusher out of the XFL, guy that was leading the league in sacks. And so pretty interesting mix. And, it's one of those, hey, they got a camp body, that's all they got. They got to try out. We'll see what they can do. And if not, I mean, it's a very low risk, kind of maybe medium reward kind of thing here for the Broncos, I would say. And it's worth exploring the XFL. I think there are some decent players that maybe just didn't get quite the opportunity in the NFL. And I think it's great that they're maybe getting an opportunity to go out there and showcase a few things. So I like the moves. We'll see if it pans out to anything.
Yeah, the other guy that they brought in, Trent Harris, 27-year-old pass rusher, was in with the Dolphins for a little bit, has 9.5 sacks so far this spring. So it will be interesting to see. I'm glad that there's another league that the NFL can kind of, comb over and bring in some guys, because there's a lot of guys out there who are talented that for one reason or another, something going on in their life, injury, et cetera, don't get the walkway to the NFL. And there is a lot of favoritism and just politics involved in, guys playing sometimes in the league. So getting a second chance, 27-year-old pass rusher they're bringing in right now. I mean, 27's prime for a pass rusher. So maybe they can bring in somebody, and maybe even if he's just, that much better in practice and making the tackle across from him better, that's good for the Broncos. Also, the other part about Trent Harris is that the Broncos, he was playing on the Roughnecks, I believe it was. Yes, Houston Roughnecks, which is the defense that is coordinated and led by Wade Phillips. So Wade Phillips kind of, leaning in there, obviously. I think Vance Joseph has some Wade Phillips ties there as well. That's actually Vance Joseph, who they tried to hire. Bengals blocked him, and then the Broncos went to Wade Phillips. But either way, aggressive scheme. Broncos bringing in 2 guys, and I don't think the Broncos are done, but kind of fun to see them bring in some XFL guys. At some point, if we're real degenerates, we're gonna have to go back and find that tape and comb over that just to see what they have there. We'll see how sad and pathetic we are getting in July. But thank you so much, Phil, for the comments. We appreciate you. Michael Laziri coming in is my fondest hope that all vets are pushed out by free agents and rookies. I want no one, Russell Wilson, most of all, to feel safe. I think the Broncos are doing that pretty well right now. I don't think anybody feels safe. I mean, Carl, I'll kick it to you. Who should feel safe on this team right now?
I'd say a lot of the offensive linemen should.
Okay.
I mean, not Wattenberg.
Yeah, not Wattenberg. I'm even talking like starters. Obviously, I think it's a handful.
Yeah. Garrett Bowles, Ben Powers, Quinn Miners, Mike McGlinchey, obviously, all of them should feel very comfortable being on this team. Alex Forsyth with just being drafted. I think right there you've got 5 guys. Lloyd Cushenberry, I think he's safe, but I don't know if he's going to be the starter.
And by safe, I mean like safe in their role, even. So like I could see like,
oh, okay,
like Russell Wilson is safe probably on the roster this season, but is he safe to be the starter? I don't think so. So when you're talking offensive line, excuse me, only guys I feel safe with are the 2 they signed, Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey. I mean, after that, there was rumors back in, February or whatnot, that Broncos might be shopping Garrett Bowles, that kind of thing. So I think the list of guys who are safe in their roles is tiny. It's the guys they signed, the draft class, and maybe then you have DJ Jones, Justin Simmons, and Patrick Surtain. After that, I'm like, I think it's competition for everybody.
Yeah, right. Like I said, the guys they signed, Zach Allen is safe, obviously.
Yeah.
I'd say Jerry Jeudy is very safe. Tim Patrick, I don't know if you can call him safe. Like, he's not been in any kind of trade rumors, so I think he's going to be on this roster. But with Mims getting obviously drafted, what does that mean for these other guys and their role that they're going to have with this team? How many snaps is he going to take away from some of them? We'll have to see. I think Alex Singleton, I think he's another guy that's pretty darn safe. Sounds like the team is really high on him, especially what he showed this last year. Beyond that, Quan Williams, because there's not really another slot corner on this team that you feel better about. I would say those guys you feel pretty good about. But yeah, it's nice. Got a lot of competition. Obviously, a new coaching staff coming in. They're going to bring in a lot of new players, new faces, because they want players that know their system. And the Broncos have not been good, so those players shouldn't feel safe. Mm-hmm. Like when you've lost this many games over the last 5-6 years, every single player should be on notice saying, hey, we have no problem seeing you go. You might be a crowd favorite, but that doesn't mean that you get to be a part of this team moving forward. And so I'm glad to see the Broncos really adding a lot to this.
And you know what the crowd will favorite even more than any specific player? Winning some damn football games. And the crowds in Denver and Mile High have not had enough of that over the last, are we approaching like 10 years now? 8 years. So pretty damn unacceptable in Denver.
Right.
Unbelievable. Dylan Von Arks, Stevie A, good to see you. Sub Broncos Country, make sure you hit that like button on the way in, share on all your platforms, and subscribe if you haven't already. Good to see you. We got Real Israel coming in from near you. Hello from me and my Spider Monkey from Kansas, Buckham and Spider Monkey. Cute Spider Monkey there. Monkeys. Did you ever see the show? What was it? Nope. The recent Jordan Peele movie. Okay, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's an incident with a chimpanzee, and I'm a little bit afraid of monkeys now. I don't know if spider monkeys are cool though, but that movie kind of freaked me out a little bit with that, more than the actual premise of the movie. Mark Bowen coming in saying, Nick and Carl, I always appreciate your insights into all things Denver Broncos. Have a great show. Well, thank you so much, Mark. We appreciate you as well. It's really nice of you to say, just to swing by and compliment us. I'm here 24/7. You can hit me up on Twitter if you have more compliments for me. Granville coming in saying, I believe 1,000% with all the new blood rookies and UDFA and camp invites, the bottom half of the roster is going to have a major shakeup. Also, a vet or two could be out of a job. It will be better for the team. I think Broncos have been not a great depth team over the last 3-4 seasons. And why do I say that? Well, okay, I guess I can't fully say that because they've been like one of the most injured teams in football too. And so that means trickle up of terms of your depth has to start, and then you have to like be finding guys, and no dip. If you're losing half your roster to injuries every single year, your depth is going to be worse. But the reason I say that is because how terrible the special teams has been. And a lot of times the depth, that's where your special teams can show out, and they've been just abysmal. So hopefully it is better this season, as Granville says here. We can hope. Mike guess. Go ahead. Go ahead, Carl.
Oh, yeah, I'll read my guesses here. What's up, Nick, Carl, Scott, Dylan, and Broncos Country? Mike, always good to see you in here. And sorry, no Alabama players this year. Man.
No. Christopher Allen, though, he's coming in. Like, he had a redshirt year last year. He had a medical redshirt. Like, I think he'd still qualify for Rookie of the Year if he won it, right? I think that's the rule if he didn't play it on his non-football injury list. So, hey, what are those odds for Chris Allen Rookie of the Year? Those are probably astronomical. You could probably make some serious money if that happened. Dakota Enlow coming in, go Broncos. Miguel Santasteven, one of our big-time superstar givers, saying, sup, fellas. Richard Miles saying, hi, guys, hope all is well. Hope all is well with all Bronco fans. That's nice of you, Richard. Gember, good morning. What is GBFL? Go Broncos, Florida?
For life.
For life. That's probably it. For life. That's easy. Yep, Scott's giving us some fingers on the back end here. But yeah, go Denver Broncos for life. And Buckham. There's another one from Scott. Ernie Mays, hello. Carl and Nick, go Broncos country only. We don't worry, Ernie. We're not breaking down the AFC West today. Jesse Hillborn, good evening, everyone. Just got done watching 3 Mims games. Kids exciting. Well, let us know what 3 games you watch. And yes, he did go to Oklahoma. Got our guy Paul in the house. It's always great to see Paul. Hope you're doing well. Dominique's in the house. Hey, Broncos family. Michaela Israel, along with Cooper, I'm sure. How you doing? Kevin Gray, good to see you, Kevin. Hope you're well. Michael Rome, the NFL needs a development. Bring back the NFL Europe. The NFL has the best development league in all of American sports, in my opinion. And what makes them great is that they don't have to pay for them. Your development league is college football. Now, if they can use the XFL as like a secondary one for like the players that are not eligible for college football anymore, that's great too. But I don't see why the NFL would shake up what's working for them, because they have a free developmental league right now that's leads into the single best selection process of anything in the end. I mean, imagine if these guys are coming out 18 and signing into this and they just like are prospects that come up. It'd be fun to watch their lower tier games. But like the NFL draft is a spectacle that there's nothing like in any other sports at all.
Yeah.
And it's a moneymaker. I mean, God, we're going to talk about this for another month. Like it's the NFL draft for the league is incredible. So I can't imagine them shaking that tree too much other than to expand the NFL draft. I don't know, Carl, you talked about it today. Talks about expanding the NFL draft to 10 rounds and having it go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Oh man, I don't know if I can do Saturday and Sunday, but I guess if the days were shorter. But what do you think about that? Chad, let us know what you think about that too. Have you heard the talk about the NFL draft? Yeah, just expanding the draft.
Right. No, I think it's worth considering for sure. From what I understand, part of the problem is there's a lot of teams that get pretty loaded up on undrafted free agents that, they kind of go towards really good teams. It's kind of like in college football. You get an offer from Alabama compared to getting an offer. I'll just go with KU. Mm-hmm. Like who you going to be looking at more? You're going to go to Alabama, right? Yeah. And, like Dallas, they always seem to be a crowd favorite for a lot of different undrafted free agents. And so I think some teams are kind of going, this seems like a little bit unfair. Let's get a few more rounds going, get an opportunity to get our guys in here. I don't know. I still like the way it is. I like the craziness of the undrafted free agents and the rush for those couple hours afterwards. And even after that, where you get a guy and you think you've signed him, then all of a sudden he changes his mind. I just like the chaos. And so I don't want him to change it. I like the 7 rounds that we have. And really the problem, if you go 10 rounds, like we get to round 7, there's a lot of times where we're kind of looking at names going, who? Like, I've never heard of this guy. He comes from some, William and Mary that nobody's ever watched a single game of this guy. So you add 3 more rounds to that, you're going to have a lot of even analysts out there going, I don't know who this guy is. How do we even talk about it? So like I said, I would rather not go that kind of direction. I look at the undrafted free agents the Broncos signed, or at least allegedly they've signed. There's only a few of them that I've really ever heard of. Thomas and Coombe, I think he's got a pretty good chance to make the roster here. Dallas Daniels, I've heard of him mostly just because, he played for, who was it? Jackson's, I can't remember. Anyway, Deion Sanders.
Yeah, Jackson.
Yeah, I think his group out down there. That's the only reason I've really heard of him before. So, like I said, you start getting into the weeds out there, and I think you'd lose a lot of people by that point. I think there'd be kind of an overkill with that.
And I know Phil has a comment here, but did want to add a little bit more to this conversation. I think a lot of teams are pushing for this also because this was talking with Eric earlier, but teams have like agreements with players, and then behind the scenes, these players have agreements with like multiple teams. So let's say I have a cornerback that I really like that I'm like, okay, if you are undrafted, you're going to come sign here. Yep, we agree to it. It sounds good. Beneath the table, handshake, whatever. And then you're like, okay, well, because we have this cornerback we really like, we're going to draft this player in the 7th round. And then that player says, actually, you know what? Nah, I'm going to go to another team. Well, if that was the case, we would have drafted you. And then you also have players who are like undrafted free agents making more money than drafted players because of the open market there. So there are some, and again, we can have a totally different conversation about the open market and the draft and the contracts and everything with them being slotted. But I think it's going to happen. Rosters are going to expand a little bit too, with the draft expanding a little bit as well. We'll see how it changes our coverage of it and the players we watch and whatnot. I mean, we're still going to do the best we can to get in, 150 guys that we feel pretty comfortable about. But yeah, it'll be fun. I'm here for the chaos also, but I'm also here to, get a few more draft picks and let those guys' names called and whatnot. Phil McLaughlin asked about the, here we go. Mile High Huddle says from Scott, players making more money and having choices. No wonder they're trying to squash it. Mm-hmm. Yep. It's not fair, Scott. Don't you know that's not fair to the teams? Phil McLaughlin coming in. Speaking of the XFL, what do you guys think about the kickoff rule? What is the kickoff rule? I can't even think of what it actually is off the top of my head. Like the running, is it the running start
one?
Or?
It's they have both teams actually start down near the other where the ball's being kicked to. They're like 10 yards apart from each other. Oh, and yes, they can't start running until the returner actually catches it. And then all of a sudden it's complete chaos, but you only got 10 yards of build up to actually run into the next person. So obviously not as many vicious hits as what you see in the NFL for kickoffs, if there is kickoffs going off. I'm not I guess I don't really care either way. Mostly because, in the NFL, something like 55% of kickoffs end up in a touchback anyway. So it's not a huge part of the game, but I mean, it's still there. So you got to care about it. But it's such a weird look. Like, I watched a little bit of it happen, and it's a really weird look to get used to, having most of the team down there. And you got a kicker who's clear back here, and that's it. And everybody else is all up here on this line, just kind of, reminds me of like the Revolutionary War, where you both just stood on opposite ends, and then all of a sudden you just shot at each other.
Fire. Yep.
It's, yeah.
Good luck. God. Yeah, it's that does sound interesting. The one thing also I like about the XFL is that they can experiment with rules like this. It's maybe if we can get some data on player safety, if it actually makes a big difference. But who knows how it goes. And we got Dirt Boys 6789 says, like Carl, but I love Nick. You're going to make me blush, but I love Carl. So, I mean, top of that. AKA the best addition to MHH family. I don't know if I'm even an addition. I've been here for a long time at this point. And I think we're approaching 6-7 years. God, that's all that you can count the whites in my hair. But appreciate that, Dirt Boy 6789. Hope you're doing well, and appreciate the shout out. So I saw a few more questions in here. Definitely wanted to get to say hello to some people in here. Zebulon coming in saying, I can't imagine the Broncos won't sign a Mark Ingram or a Kareem Hunt or maybe even Ezekiel Elliott for a year at some point. I would be pretty surprised too if the Broncos didn't bring in another running back. I mean, for how much they seemed to have emphasized the running game this offseason with the personnel moves they made, to only have Samaje Perine as your like back that you can really trust right now doesn't seem like a great strategy. So if you want to be another team, I think they have to find somebody out there who's competent, and there's always running backs at this point that you can find are competent. So they'll bring in somebody else. Maybe it's not even one of these names, but there's always a Latavius Murray type out there, like the Broncos found last year. Do you have any thoughts on any of these names?
I saw some people. Yeah, I saw some people getting pretty upset about the Murray going to the Bills, I think it was, and just being like, "Oh no, Broncos, you missed your opportunity." And I'm like, "No, there's another 10 Latavius Murrays out there." So I'm not too worried about it. Like I said, I mean, this is a decent list of names. These are guys that have been starters in the league for a long time. I mean, Kareem Hunt doesn't have a whole lot of carries on him, so I think he could come in and even be a starter day one for the Broncos. He's been a very underrated back in the league, just because he's been a backup there in Cleveland behind maybe one of the best running backs in football. But obviously you got some of the background stuff you got to do with him that you got to worry about, just some of the analytics with that, or the optics with that. Zeke, I wouldn't go touch him just because he's very much on the downhill part of his career. I don't know how much he really has left. I think he's a very replacement level running back at this point. So I'm not going in that direction. Mark Ingram, I mean, he knows the system, so that helps. He fit in well with what the coach wants. But I think the Broncos have time. They can figure out who they want. They can bring in guys out for tryouts. Just that's part of the running back position, unfortunately, in the NFL. They don't want to pay guys big money. And so you actually end up having a lot of decent names on the market for a while until a lot of injuries start piling up. I mean, it's what Latavius Murray. He was on a practice squad last year before he became the starter for the Broncos. So just kind of shows, again, there's plenty of talent out there for that position. You don't have to rush it at this point.
I'm here. It popped out there for a second. I don't know what's going on, but here I am. We're good. It froze for a sec, but we're good. That's I'd be happy with either of those guys. I mean, you talked about Zeke being a practice squad guy, but I mean, that's kind of the running back, or replacement level, but that's kind of what we're looking for. So if he's there for cheap, then I would have no issue with it. He doesn't have the baggage. He's also a really good pass protector. So something, I mean, he has a niche role there. If you're talking 10, 15 carries a game for a 1-year contract for what, $3 million? Maybe that, and if that's disrespectful to him, then God bless. I hope you find a better contract than that. But that's the kind of deal that I'm looking for. And I'm not against Ezekiel Elliott, but it needs to be for the right price, without a doubt. We got Jesse Hilborn coming in saying, what about Dalvin Cook? I've heard some rumors about him. It sounds like there might be some stuff out there with Dalvin Cook. What do you think about Cook, Carl?
I mean, at the right price, he'd be worth it, but he's got a big contract. So are you going to take that on? You're going to have to figure out some cap issues moving forward. How much are you trading for him? Mm-hmm. You're already limited on some draft capital. You already traded that 3rd round pick. I mean, I know you still have another one, but you're missing your 2nd round pick. I'd rather not see them go out there and trade a lot of draft capital or even players at this point to go get him. I mean, if it's maybe the 3rd round pick and Cortland Sutton, so then you can make his contract maybe work here a little bit easier. I could maybe see that because he's a great running back. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with him as a player. I think he brings exactly what Sean Payton loves in a running back, with that speed, with that catching ability. Obviously has pretty darn good vision, all of that. I mean, he's a great all-around running back, but I think right now you can feel okay with Pirine, hoping that Williams can get healthy and maybe find, again, one of those guys that's on the free agent market and not have to trade things to go get him.
Yeah, I agree with you. The other thing is that he's been exceedingly injured over the last few seasons with the running back position. So the Broncos will be able to find somebody. They're going to bring in another back, somebody you've probably heard of before. They won't pay a lot. I mean, last year you had Latavius Murray go off. They signed him. Brought him a practice squad mid-season after that Jacksonville game, I believe. They also, last year you saw Donta Foreman. I think he was like owning a truck driving company or something, then signed with Carolina, and now he just got a good contract from the Bears to go out there and play. I mean, there's running backs out there. This is where your pro scouts have to be able to find some people, but they are there. There's probably 2 or 3 right now that could come in and really help your room out. Maybe even 5 to 10 at this point in the offseason still. So they'll be able to find somebody. Who is it going to be? I don't know. Maybe it's even this XFL kid. We'll find out. But I'm excited about the options. I'm not super excited about the room as it currently stands, even though I like Samaje Perine. I think it's more about how much I do not want to put on Javonte Williams and how much I'd even like suggest to him and advise him, like, slow play this, because if you go back out there and you get injured again, you're not 100%, you're only hurting yourself. And as soon as you get hurt again, this team will move on from you. You got to protect yourself. So hopefully Javonte Williams come back healthy when he's ready. So let's start to get into this at Albert Knoppers. Hello, Albert. Hope you're doing well. It's good to see you. We got Harold Jean saying, why can't we just keep all our running backs we have on our roster and invite? Stop spending so much money on scrubs. Because there's different level of scrubs. And unfortunately, I think some of the Broncos back end running backs they have right now are borderline. They're guys who might be playing the XFL, like Tony Jones and Demaria Crockett and some of these other like Tyler Beatty guys that haven't done anything in the league. So you just want to add a little bit more options to your room. Maybe that's even when teams start to cut down on players as well. But you need to have somebody with a little bit more upside and a known quantity there right now if you are going to be a run-oriented team. I mean, right now it's Pirine and WTF, who the hell knows kind of guys back there. So you hope for the best, but I think they do have to add at least another option there. Unless you hear really great news about Javonte Williams, but I would be extremely... I really doubt that we're going to hear much about Javonte Williams in the time that you'd have to make this kind of decision. So we'll see. But yeah, I hear you. You talk about scrubs, but I mean, hopefully you can add a slightly better scrub. So we'll see how it plays out on that. And yeah, Beatty hasn't gotten a chance. I mean, Ravens have one of the most, Ravens have needed running back because they've had crazy injuries there. He was drafted in the 5th round and they let him go still on his rookie contract. So we'll see. I mean, maybe he ends up being good, but that's kind of the guy that you don't bet on when they have that sort of a trajectory already in the league for a team that's probably as run friendly as any system in the NFL. Outside maybe the Falcons. But Carl, let's get into it. You didn't have a chance to talk much about day 3. The Broncos bringing in J.L. Skinner in the 6th round and then Alex Forsyth in the 7th round. So we're going to go backwards on this for our topic today and discuss what the competition looks like for these players on the roster as it stands and what potential role these guys could have. Scott and I kind of talked about this today, but I want to get into more about the players around these guys and what it looks like for the roster perspective. Who is the guy going to make the practice squad? Is he going to get kicked out? Is he going to potentially be a starter? So I'd like to start with Alex Forsyth, Oregon cornerback, drafted 257 overall, I believe, maybe 254, and has a chance to play center this season. Your first, before we even get into his competition, your thoughts on Alex Forsyth, Broncos' last draft pick?
Yeah, I like him. I mean, obviously, if you're looking at it as athletic testing, horrific. I mean, just about as bad as you can get at this point. But if you actually watch his games, you sit there and see a guy that looks smart on the field, gets people lined up in the right spot, does well in both the pass and the run. I think he gave up 0 sacks, 0 hits, and only 1 hurry this past season as a pass blocker. Now, I will say, if you go back and watch Oregon, they have a lot of quick passing game. So I'm not going to completely say he's a great pass blocker by any means, because there wasn't really a whole lot of just perfect, true pass blocking sets where, hey, it's 3rd and 10, you got to hold your guy. But I mean, he went against some great competition, went against Georgia. I saw him get beat once, and he talked about this actually at the combine, where he said, somebody asked him about that time where he got beat, and he said, yeah, I learned from it. He did this spin move on me. I learned what I got to do, give him a little space, wait for him to do that spin, hit him again. And I like that he learned from it and learned from it in the game. And so again, it shows that intelligence that he brings to the field. From everything I've heard, like I said, smart guy, hard worker. But again, I don't know if he's going to be like a plus starter for you, but I don't think you need a plus starter per se at the center position, as long as you get even competent play. Broncos haven't had that in years from the center position. And so if you can get that from a guy like him, I think he has a real chance to go out there and start. I mean, Lloyd Cushenberry's done nothing to make you believe that he can be the true starter for the Broncos. And if there's anybody that should be completely terrified, it's him, even if it's against the 7th rounder. That's just how bad he's been. So, like I said, I do like Forsyth. I had him going a lot higher than what he ended up going in the draft. But again, his testing put him down quite a ways. I don't think he looks that slow on the field. I mean, he's not a guy that's like moving and like you're just sitting there going, oh, look at that. But at the same time, like I said, he's usually getting to his spot. He's a very smart guy. And I think he makes up for a lot of lack of athleticism because of that intelligence.
Yeah, there's just not a lot of quality interior defensive linemen that he had the chance to go up against in the Pac-12 the last few seasons. Unfortunately, right? That's kind of the state of Pac-12 football right now. USC and UCLA definitely have been on the up. Washington's had some okay teams as well, but just I can't think of outside of, when Oregon got walloped, I mean, absolutely bludgeoned by Georgia. I can't think of many times he actually went up against NFL caliber defensive linemen off the top of my head. So that makes it a little bit hard. Also, Oregon kind of runs a little bit of high speed. It's not the Chip Kelly area, but a little bit more of a widespread zone, and that even includes the offensive linemen. So you talk about that, you talk about the athleticism, but overall, center specifically is a neck up position, right? So if he can be an extremely intelligent guy, getting his spots, he might be an upgrade on Lloyd Cushenberry. And Lloyd Cushenberry is an interesting one still. So let's pivot it now to this Broncos roster. Obviously, you have Lloyd Cushenberry out there still, who is probably the Broncos' odds-on favorite to be the starting center this season. Last year of his contract has struggled, but somebody who maybe with more mass and ability on both sides of him this upcoming season might be a little bit better. Obviously, entering year 4 of his rookie contract, and somebody that the Broncos, we have it on pretty good authority. They did try to trade up for a center. It just never materialized for them. So we'll see how it plays out for them. But what do you think right now about the Broncos center position after we get to this comment from Gary Palmer coming in saying, hey, Carl and Nick and Scott, hope I didn't miss much. Gary, we just told everybody the keys to the universe, the rule, what's the point of life, meaning of life. It's 42, but we'll just get to the short part there. But yeah, no, not missing too much. We're just hanging out and having fun, Gary. Thanks for coming in and chipping in. It really does help us. Really do appreciate that. But what do you think about this Broncos center position? What are the chances that Forsyth could actually end up being your starting center, not only week 1, but at some point this upcoming season?
Yeah, I mean, I probably put it at 70-30 that Lloyd Cushenberry is your starter, 30% that it's Forsyth. Well, maybe I guess I should go like 25% Forsyth, and then you got Wattenberg from last year. I guess I got to give him a little bit of a shot. I really think Peyton's going to lean into not having much of last year's draft class being here. And, I think you saw a little bit of Peyton after the post-draft going around talking to all the media, and it kind of seemed almost like he was saying goodbye a little bit. Like, I mean, he's not done that before, where he's like going to everybody individually, having a conversation with them. And so I do think you're going to see a little bit of that of Peyton saying, hey, those are your guys. These are my guys. I'm keeping my guys. And so right now, I can't see Wattenberg beating out even Forsyth because that's a Sean Payton guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're probably right on that one. I think that I still think it's Cushenberry is going to be the starter right now. I mean, they kept him. He's been here for 4 years, and a lot of times it takes centers a long time to kind of get it. Now I know he's been what is it, 5-year player at Oregon, so he's been around the program for a bit, but it's a different beast in the NFL. So even though Cushenberry has been a below average player for the Broncos at center, I think that it probably will be Cushenberry again this season. You hope that Forsyth can be somebody that you see the development enough with him over the course of the season that you feel okay going with him in 2024, kind of that path to him. So my next question to you with Forsyth is odds of him making the roster this season. I know that the Broncos, there's been some talk that they actually do really like Kyle Fuller, not the cornerback, but the center they brought in. There's some other guards options on here. Is there a chance that Forsyth could be somebody who's plays on the practice squad this season?
I mean, there's always that chance. And I mean, teams take a risk, especially with 7th rounders all the time, and usually can get them onto the practice squad, no problem. Yeah. I think, again, I still think he's going to end up making the roster just because I think Wattenberg's going to be gone. I think Forsyth has the size that he could be if you need him to play at guard a little bit. I mean, we saw Wattenberg play guard last year a little bit, and I'm not great.
I don't know if we can say,
but he still played.
He lined up at the guard position.
Okay, there you go. But yeah, I still see Forsyth making the roster just because you're going to keep a couple interior guys. I mean, like I said, Kyle Fuller, probably good chance he's going to make it. Bailey Quinn's maybe another one. And then I think Forsyth would be your third one that you'd probably keep for that interior. And I don't think the swing tackle's on the roster right now.
I hope not.
If I'm being honest. You know, I still would love to see them bring Cameron Fleming back, but I know he's asking for a lot of money. We'll just have to see if that price comes down as the offseason goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. And our price isn't coming down because we got our guy Mark from Georgia coming in saying, "What's up, guys? Good to see you, Mark. I feel like it's been a bit since you've been popping in around here, but always appreciate you coming in and saying hello. It's hope you're doing well out there in Georgia. Say hi to Scott for me some point." And then the last bit I wanted to get to, Dylan kind of talks about it. You kind of talked on it too, but Wattenberg, I mean, I feel like this is a pick that you can translate it and say, yep, Wattenberg, this is your replacement. Good luck. I've seen the David Silver meme going around this week because of I don't pay attention to basketball, but the guy who just talked crap about LeBron James and LeBron killed him. And then Memphis is now out of the playoffs. And the meme of David Silver being like, good luck, or you start learning Chinese, buddy. That's how I feel about Luke Wattenberg because, man, he was horrible last year. 5th round pick, older for the position as well. And I think somewhat of a handpicked player by the Broncos' previous offensive line coach, whose name's escaping me right now, that I know that not a lot of fans of him in Broncos country and in that Broncos locker room. So I'd be pretty shocked if Wattenberg was here. I think he's the longest shot of any of the guys that we talked about to make this roster. So final thoughts on Forsyth before we get on out of here. Anything like you think do you think he'll start? Yes or no? Is he going to be the starter at some point this season for the Broncos at center?
Yes, I will say that. Wow. I mean, we saw. I'm just saying that mostly because of Lloyd Cushenberry, not because I think Forsyth is going to be this great player, but I think you're just going to see the coaching staff get more and more frustrated with Lloyd Cushenberry, and if they find any reason to be able to replace him, let's say, oh, you got a little banged up ankle. Yep. Hey, we need to sit you for a couple games just because they'll want to see, hey, what can Forsyth do if he gets out there? That's kind of my thought there. They did it last year where Lloyd Cushenberry was healthy, and they said, nah, we're just going to keep you on the bench. Even though we have horrible depth on our offensive line, we're just going to keep you here. And I know he got ticked off about that. And like I said, this whole offseason, the Broncos have tried to replace him. They've tried to trade him. So to me, your actions show what you think of somebody. And if you're trying to trade him or cut him or, something, or, find his replacement, like I said, we tried to trade up in the second round there. We're hoping that John Michael Schmitz would maybe fall another couple more picks. Then the Broncos might have been able to get up and get him. But to me, that all points to, if we can find a way to replace Lloyd Cushenberry, we're going to do it. Oh, Nick is a little bit frozen here. So I'll read Phil McLaughlin's here. It says, I'm thinking that Mims is going to be a returner. And I think he can play the Z and X positions. Opinions, Phil, you're right. I mean, I think the main idea for the Broncos this year is, I mean, they talked about his returnability, viewed him as one of the top 2 returners in this draft. And it's part of why they wanted to bring him in. And beyond that, like I said, Z and X slot, he can play it all. He did it in college. This last year, he played a lot more outside receiver compared to the year before that. They used him a lot more in the slot, but it just shows. I mean, this guy, wherever you put him, he's going to find a way to have success. I think for the Broncos, I would want him more on the outside, just a little bit more options on some deep routes. Just that's what fits his game and getting down the field. But really, like I said, I mean, you can do that from really any spot. I mean, the slot, you can do the slot fade, and obviously his ability to go up and jump and get a football is pretty darn good for a guy that's 5'10", 180 pounds. So obviously, I mean, I talked about it on the show when we were doing it live during the draft. Love Mims. Absolutely love this kid. Very excited that he is a Denver Bronco. Not the direction I thought the Broncos would go with their very first pick in the Sean Payton era, but as a player and just a playmaker, he is quite, I think he's one of the top players in the draft of what he can bring to the table that way.
Yeah, talking about X, and I know that the positions that these guys play has been blurred ever more, so it's not, I don't think it's as big of a deal, but if you're talking about X being that guy who's lined up on the line of scrimmage, even like immediately on the line of scrimmage, not off, then I do worry about his ability to beat press against the more physical, longer, bigger cornerbacks of the NFL. I think I saw some of that at Oklahoma when I've watched him, but again, Big 12 style of defense, not only, the level of talent on the defensive side, but the types of defenses they were going against. I'm just curious about how translatable that is at the next level. So we'll see. Let's keep it moving here. We have a lot of Cushionberry talk going on, but I want to keep the ball moving here because Carl hasn't had a chance to talk about JL Skinner either. So Broncos 6th round pick, JL Skinner, safety from Boise State. A lot of people thought he'd end up being a late round 3 to like mid round 4 player. Tears his pec, I think 3 days before the combine, so we don't get the combine data. Maybe he won't be ready for rookie training camp or anything. Who knows how long? I think he said he's a month out still, but it's an injury. Who knows how long it'll actually be until you're actually ready. But big safety, tall safety from Boise State. I think he was the Senior Bowl North's defensive back of the week, voted on by his teammates, if I'm not mistaken. I could be incorrect on that one. But what do you think about the Skinner pick for the Broncos, bringing in a second defensive back in their concurrent pick?
I like it. I mean, we talked about it, that safety was kind of a sneaky need for the Broncos. Right now you got Justin Simmons and then a lot of question marks. Caden Stearns, is he going to be healthy? Is he going to play more like his rookie year? Or is he going to play more like he did last year? You got, the other kid from Oklahoma from last year. I'm trying to remember his name. Yeah, there you go. And, he was okay on special teams, but he didn't really show anything on defense for the Broncos. And so getting another guy that can add to that room and getting a guy that's very different than any other safety you have on your team right now. Like you said, 6'4" for a safety and a guy that can come down and just wallop somebody. If you get him running downhill, this guy is going to be special for you. Probably, I heard somebody say that maybe you should have JL Skinner teach Drew Sanders how to tackle.
That was me that said that.
And it's probably, is that you? Okay. I couldn't remember, but you're right. It's probably true. That's exactly. If you could teach Drew Sanders how to tackle, and that guy was getting it down to maybe like 5% of missed tackles instead of 19.8%, man, that guy would be special. He'd be first round talent kind of guy. But yeah, Skinner, great tackler, great guy coming downhill, can go make plays down the field as well. Probably the biggest question with him is some of that change of direction stuff, just being that kind of size. You get against some of these tight ends or slot receivers that can cut on a dime. He's probably going to have some struggles with that. And that's my one big concern with him. But again, he's a 6th round pick. He's going to help out on special teams. He could maybe be your starter at safety. And like I said, he's going to come down, if you are losing Kareem Jackson this offseason, you need a guy that can come down and make those plays in the backfield, stuff a guy at the line of scrimmage. And he is definitely that kind of guy. He showed that very much at Boise State. So Again, another player that I really like, great value, should be ready for the season. I'm kind of surprised that he was there in the 6th round.
Yeah, and you know who's ready for the season? Richard Miles with the Stars coming in here. Thank you so much, Richard. Watching JL Skinner, I see somebody who is actually pretty smooth for how big he is, but there's like I don't really see a lot of explosiveness out of the breaks. You know, like the cutting on the ball, unless it's like immediately coming downhill and making a big hit. And he has some awesome tackles on tape. Like he does a good job of understanding, leverage and delivers some wallops out there. And I don't think a lot of missed tackles either. So, he's a little bit small sometimes in terms of getting off blocks. See a little bit of issue with that, but he'll find his guy in the knife in there. I actually liked him coming down from the 2nd and 3rd level more than I liked watching Drew Sanders in those open field kind of tackle situations. So JL Skinner, fun player. You talked about his role here this upcoming season. Who do you see his main competition for a pathway to the field in this upcoming year? I mean, do you have him on the back end with the safeties? Could it possibly be also because of what Vance Joseph likes to do, like a third safety dimebacker type, where he's, they didn't use that role last year because they were playing so much penny. But I know Vance Joseph did like to use that third safety as that kind of linebacker safety hybrid.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll maybe be more the third safety coming in. I think good chance, unless there's still a chance they're going to bring Kareem Jackson back. I know they're still having conversations with him. If Kareem Jackson is back, then it's going to be a competition between Caden Stearns and JL Skinner for that third safety who gets to come off in those big packages. I could see a little bit of his role even when they go to some of that nickel and dime, putting him at that linebacker spot.
Mm-hmm.
And, just again, he's got size. He's got no problem coming downhill, tackling somebody. And you kind of like having that 6'4" with speed ability playing at that kind of position on those pure passing situations. I could definitely see that. I mean, I heard somebody say that Josie Jewell and Singleton could play on rundowns, and then all of a sudden you sub out them for the 2 rookies coming in just because of their athleticism that they bring to the table. I don't think that's going to happen by any means. But again, I think you could have some specialty packages where you put Skinner down in that kind of place and say, hey, we trust you in the middle of the field here. Go make a play for us. And good luck trying to throw over a 6'4" guy that can run like him. If you're trying to do those quick passes, if you bring a quick blitz and have him man the middle of the defense, I like that idea for the Broncos. But early on, his role is going to be special teams. He's coming back from injury, so he's going to miss a little bit of some of the programs this summer. And I think I do like Caden Stearns if he gets the chance to go out there and start, if they don't re-sign Kareem Jackson. And I do think they probably will re-sign Kareem Jackson. So again, I think he kind of gets pushed down, and maybe this is more of a learning year for him. Gets a few snaps on defense because he is a good playmaker, but mostly his role is going to be special teams.
I agree with you. I do think, though, as the roster currently stands, he might be the third safety on the roster. You have 5th round pick last year, as we talked about, Delaire Turner-Yell, but he hasn't done too much. And then PJ Locke, who the Broncos thought enough of to waive and then bring back for cheap. And he was out there for a bit. Nobody signed him. So the Broncos, I think he can come in and be the third safety. If they do bring in Kareem Jackson, it's a different conversation. But I mean, would you rank him ahead of PJ Locke and Delaire Turner-Yell right now? I think that, again, we talked about it with Wattenberg. You brought in a guy who plays a similar position that, the new regime might prefer their guy they picked. Now you have the same exact thing with JL Skinner versus Delaire Turner-Yell.
Yeah, I do. I put him ahead of them.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think he's shown more in college than what I saw from either of those guys coming out. And I think just with his size alone, like I said, his opportunity on defense, I think you can find something for him to be able to do. Mm-hmm. I just, with Delaire Turner-Yell, I see him just pretty much all special teams. I just really don't see a great spot for him playing defense in the NFL. I just don't think he's quite built for that. PJ Locke, again, Broncos liked him last year, but that was last year's coaching staff. So he's got to learn, or he's got to prove it again to a whole new coaching staff. And he's going to have to do it against, like I said, a guy that they just drafted that they really like. So he's got an uphill battle to win that one. I think if it's close, they go with their guy that they just drafted.
Yeah, can't disagree. And talking about the defensive backfield, moving on to the next pick, Riley Moss, probably the shock of the draft. Broncos trading up a future 3rd round pick from 108 to get up to 88, 83 to go get Riley Moss, cornerback from Iowa. the Broncos' highest relative athletic score player they drafted the entire process, given his weight and height and overall testing. Hurdler, really good track athlete coming out of a small school in Iowa, ends up going to Iowa, starts as a true freshman. Does not happen very often out there after an injury occurs, takes it and doesn't look back. Starts there for the next four seasons at Iowa. Goes down to the Senior Bowl, has a solid Senior Bowl out there, and Broncos trade up and get him. That I think George Payton or Sean Payton, one of them, mentioned that they did more work on the Riley Moss pick than any other player in the entire draft class, trying to figure out him exactly. So let's try to do it now. We got like 5 minutes, talk about Riley Moss. Let's figure him out. What's his role? Who's he battling with next year?
So for a little bit, I thought maybe they would be kind of giving him a little bit of a hybrid role, safety corner, just kind of depending where they needed him, until they drafted JL Skinner. That was the point that I'm like, okay, they view him truly as that pure cornerback, and which I that's where I want him, honestly. Again, we've talked about it before on here of Broncos have so little at the cornerback position right now, especially outside cornerback. And so having some competition, especially for Damari Mathis, is huge for the Broncos. And, I think Mathis, he showed he can play in the league last year, but he wasn't perfect by any means. He wasn't.
His first game was rough.
You could say, yeah, there's a couple games that were pretty rough for him. He made some great plays, and he at least showed a lot of confidence. It didn't matter how many times he got penalized. He was still going to go out there and be aggressive, which I'd like to see. But I think Moss, again, he is a pick from this regime. So you got to think that he's got a leg up in some of that. I think there's a really good chance if there is a rookie that can start for the Denver Broncos, it is Riley Moss. I think he's got the clearest path. I think he's got one competition. He's got one player to beat out, and that's it. And like I said, Damari Mathis, I think he can be a great cornerback in the NFL, but right now he's pretty much on even level, in my opinion, with Riley Moss going into this offseason.
Yeah, and the one thing I have Moss going for him over Mathis is that both great athletes, both players that I like a good bit. I loved that Mathis pick last season, but Moss is a turnover machine. He takes the ball away like crazy. So we'll be curious to see. I mean, I know that flashback a year ago, we talked about Mathis potentially moving to safety, being a slot player, being a boundary player. Some similar conversation with Riley Moss. So I think you have the ability to get any of these guys on the field. They can be versatile, and the fact that you add another player out there for competition is good. I mean, now that you have Moss there along with Mathis, best player wins, and I feel okay about the backup too if an injury occurs for a little bit to a player that's not named PS2. So I like Moss a lot. I'm curious about the competition here. I mean, is it just pretty, set in stone that Moss Moss will either be cornerback 2 or cornerback 3. I mean, just looking at some of these boundary names right now, Tremont Smith, he was brought in purely for special teams. I mean, I guess there's a chance he could do it as well, but I don't see it compared to them. Jaquan McMillan had some flashes last year, but I don't know if he's going to be the guy. The real question mark for me is, are they going to kick out somebody like a Sang Bassi, who doesn't offer very much special teams ability, not a great athlete, for somebody who has a little bit more inside-outside versatility, such as a Mathis and a Moss?
Yeah, I'm with you there. Like I said, none of those names stick out to me as guys that you are halfway excited about or think that they have decent potential.
Yeah.
McMillan, maybe a little bit, because he did have some decent games last year when asked upon for the Broncos. But again, a very small sample size, and he wasn't really challenged as much as he would like to be able to see. At least Damari Mathis was challenged a lot last year. Like, teams were like, okay, we're not going to throw a PS2, so we're just going to throw a lot at this kid. And I mean, it was up and down, but you at least saw some victories against some very good wide receivers. And so right now it is, at worst, Riley Moss is cornerback 3. I don't see any way, unless they bring in somebody else this offseason, that he finishes less than that.
Yeah. I agree. They really need another guy out there. They did a lot of work on him. He's got a pathway to the field, and you're typically going to see, 6, 7 defensive backs rotated, whether it be safety or cornerbacks. Versatile players are good. And we got our guy Nade coming in saying Moss isn't just an interception machine. He also hits like a dump truck. Don't know if he hit as well as his counterpart across the way in Cooper DeJean, but he's definitely a solid tackler out there. And I think, just the turnovers are so valuable in today's NFL. And not only is it the turnovers, but once he gets the ball in his hands, he's a weapon. He's got a real good chance to kind of like turn into a kick returner or a punt returner immediately as soon as he takes it and take it the other way. So those turnovers are going to matter. Broncos have been dreadful in turnover. Defense has been good the last 5 years, but the turnovers have been horrible outside of Justin Simmons. So they need to get somebody out there who can take the ball away, and Moss does that pretty well. So now let's keep it going forward. Actually, let's real quick. Who's the starting cornerback opposite of Patrick Surtain this upcoming season?
I'll go Riley Moss.
Man, that's crazy.
It's awesome. That's crazy. I think he's a great fit for the system. Smart player. I don't think it's going to take him long to transition to the NFL. Got a ton of experience, obviously, there in college, and was one of the top players on a very good, underrated defense there for Iowa. It's the only way that they halfway won some games. I guess special teams. I shouldn't discount the Iowa special teams by any means. But still, I mean, this guy was challenged on quite a few throws because, like I said, the other quarterback on the other side, he's being talked about as a first-round cornerback. And so Riley Moss was getting plenty of targets and held up just fine. Had plenty of turnovers, like you said. That's one thing you see with that. With J.L. Skinner, turnover machine. Drew Sanders did great at getting, I think he had 3 forced fumbles this last year. Now you got Riley Moss, who had 4 interceptions this past season. We got Mike Gibbons coming in with a super chat. Thank you so much. If you got a question for us, Mike, make sure you get it in here into the chat. But just appreciate you seeing you here. But again, they got turnover guys. You got Justin Simmons, again, already there. PS2 doesn't get a lot of targets, but he has his rookie year had some great interceptions for the Broncos. So I think you see that they're trying to get more of those turnovers, find ways to steal a couple possessions, maybe offer a little bit more for the offense.
And I mean, the year the Saints won the Super Bowl, it was like one of the most turnover oriented defenses in football, that 2009 defense. So maybe they try to replicate that. I don't know if the Broncos offense is enough to kind of make teams be turnover prone, right? On the other side, feeling scared. Also, I'm curious about the consistency and the talent of the pass rush to help that back end as much, but we'll find out. There's some talented players there. Moving on now. So right now I'd probably have Mathis starting over Moss, but that's just because of known quantity. And that's me as an Iowa guy, maybe guarding myself from, any naysayers out there for those Hawkeyes. But moving on, Drew Sanders, fun player. We talked about him a lot. I think both of our favorite picks in the draft, a really fun pressure player. The Broncos can do a lot with him. Pretty good sideline to sideline guy. I think solid in space as well. Not incredible in space. Like you put on his college tape and watch him, pursue a guy and close an angle. And you put on somebody like Devin White or Micah Parsons in college, and it's like, there's a reason that those guys were top 10 picks versus Drew Sanders going at 67, but still pretty darn good. Offers a different type of athlete that the Broncos haven't had a linebacker in a bit, in my opinion, and somebody who can get after the quarterback. If you're going to be a pressure-oriented front seven, you need your linebackers to be able to do some stuff from that second level, and I think that he can do that. What do you see his role year one? Who's he competing with on this team?
Well, I mean, he's competing for probably nickel snaps. I don't think he's going to be your base defense kind of guy because Josie Jewell and Singleton have proven to be 2 great guys for that setup. And they're both very smart veterans. He's going to struggle to see the field other than, like I said, some specialty packages where you're sitting there saying, okay, we got to take advantage of this guy's ability to get after the quarterback. And like I said, just having a coach that really loves to get after the quarterback, blitz. And I wanted to get to this of Seth Harmon coming in here with a super chat. Thank you so much, Seth. Again, if you have a question for us right here at the end of the show, make sure you get it in for us. But just really appreciate you supporting us.
Big time.
Yeah, that is great to see right here at the end.
Closer today. Thank you so much, Seth. Yeah. I really appreciate that. That's huge.
Yeah. But like I said, I think he's just going to be a specialty package kind of guy where you're sitting there saying, okay, now we want teams to either think that he's coming on a blitz, that we're bringing the blitz, or he is actually going to be the guy coming. And I think this is one of the great things with also having Baron Browning, where you can do pressure packages where you're only sending 4, but you can have either Baron Browning on the line dropping back or Drew Sanders faking like he's blitzing and drop back and make them have to figure out who are the 4 coming. And then every once in a while, then you send everybody. And so it's a great setup for the Broncos where they got some very versatile players and how they can use them on the field. That they just haven't had that great blitzing linebacker for a while here. Once they moved Baron Browning to edge, they lost that ability. And so now having Drew Sanders, he at least adds that back for him.
Yeah, and again, just shout out to Seth Harmon here for the big time super, and Mike Gevins as well. 1999, Gary Leeds Palmer. I mean, you guys are doing it awesome today. You're making more picks than the Broncos did with us. You're making us have to have more picks than the Broncos did in the draft. But appreciate you so much. Shout out to Seth again. 49.99 is super helpful. But I agree with you. I think he's year one a super sub player, and I also think he's a dynamite special teams guy as well, which you need kind of a core for, as they've mentioned, for him, which is great because this team needs special teams so badly. They've just been horrible there. So another special teams guy out there for him. We didn't even talk about Moss's special teams ability as well, but he's definitely one that can factor there. And you mentioned it. People are going to think, oh, he's a sub-package linebacker. That's great. He's a sub-package linebacker in a sense that he's a great pass rusher, not a great pass coverage player. Now, I did see some good plays in terms of running backs down, like if they had the dump off in the flat or some stuff where somebody's crossing into his zone. But like as far as man coverage versus a tight end, I can't even think of a single play where he was out there like that. Arkansas liked to play a lot of 3 defensive linemen, and they would walk him up over the defensive ends, but outside the defensive end, or a lot of time lines up over a one-on-one over a guard, trying to isolate him versus an interior offensive lineman. Those were the the passing looks that I saw from him a lot of times. So Broncos country, people have been screaming for your Travis Kelce stopper. A, that player does not exist unless their name is Fred Warner, maybe. And B, that's not Drew Sanders' game, at least not right now. So Phil McLaughlin coming in saying, great show tonight, guys. Thanks for all you do. Thank you, Phil, coming back in with the stars. The one thing we talked about earlier, his tackling technique is not great. His getting off block technique is not great. There's some areas that he's going to have to work on. But I agree with you completely. That's his year one role. And who's he competing with? Justin Strnad and Jonas Griffith. Both those guys bring special teams value as well. I think that Sanders is not even competing with himself. Not competing with anybody but himself. And you have Strnad and Jonas Griffith competing with each other for that fourth linebacker role, that pure special teams linebacker. Any thoughts on that before we move on to the final pick?
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. He's definitely got to be number 3 after using a 3rd round pick and very much talking him up in all the post draft interviews and everything else. I think they already view him as that number 3. So I think Jonas Griffith probably wins that competition just because, again, great athlete. And I think they still are pretty high on him as a player that can come in and start if you need him to. But we'll have to see how that one plays out.
Yeah, it will be interesting. And talking about playing out, last position here, Marvin Mims, the Broncos trade up from 68 to 63 overall. Last pick in the 2nd round. Broncos make the last pick in the 2nd round. Both from Oklahoma, too. I just made that connection. Interesting. But they trade up for Marvin Mims, smaller player, Texas all-time receiving player. I mean, you talked about him earlier, how much you love him. I think he's going to be a fun player for this team. I see him more as probably a deep kind of slot vertical guy year one, but maybe could diversify his skill set a little bit. Still extremely young. Hopefully can add a little bit more strength still as the years go on. But what do you see Mims's year one role being for this team? Who's he competing with? Who does he have to beat out to get those snaps and those targets that he probably wants?
Yeah. So he's competing special teams wise, Montreal, Washington as a returner.
Yikes.
I'm not sure how much of a competition that really is, but I think Mims will win that one. I think that he'll be the starting punt returner for sure and kick returner because you want to get this guy opportunities. You want to get the ball in his hands because he is a playmaker. You saw in college, he had 2 years of having per reception over 20 yards. That's huge. That's a guy that's getting down the field, making plays for you. As for the offense, again, there's going to be some specialty packages where you're trying to spread a team out and you're just sitting there saying, hey, take the top off the defense for us. If they don't take a safety with you, we're going to hit you for a deep ball. If they do, we got all these guys running these underneath routes. Jerry Jeudy doing all of his stuff underneath works out great. And it's like I said, I think he can run a lot of those slot plays. That's what he did that in 2021 a lot for Oklahoma and had a great season, making some huge plays for him. He, for being a smaller guy, jump balls, he wins a lot of those plays. It's kind of crazy some of the catches that he makes. He actually struggles more with plays where he's being hit over the middle of the field on the short passes where it seems like he's trying to go make a bigger play. He's already looking up, and so he's lost that concentration on actually bringing in the football. But if it's just a jump ball and that's all you're focused on, that guy makes some of the greatest circus catches that you see out there. His catch against Texas in 2021, huge. He had another one behind a defender, like one-handed right behind a defender catching it. I don't know still how he caught that one.
Versus
One of the
Texas
best.
Tech.
It was,
right?
Yeah, Texas Tech. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So again, he can make some highlight plays for you, and you just love that speed. He's going to take over the KJ Hamler role. I have a really hard time believing KJ Hamler makes this roster if all receivers stay healthy. Now, injuries happen. Maybe KJ Hamler makes the roster, but I see right now this Mims pick takes him off the roster.
I agree with you. I'm curious to see what happens with Kendall Hinton, as well as Marquez Callaway and Lil Jordan Humphrey. Obviously different types of players than Mims, but it's a numbers game at this point with that. And the other thing about this Mims pick, you mentioned it earlier about how good he can be as a special teamer and a kick returner. I see a lot of people, they're trying really hard to how can we trade Sutton or maybe even Tim Patrick to create a spot for Mims? But if Mims is going to be your kick returner this season, I don't think that you have to totally get rid of those guys because there's still manufactured touches in those punts and everything like that. So for year one, him being wide receiver 4 and your first punt returner, that's fine. And maybe after this season, maybe he shows himself so well down the stretch that it's like, listen, we have to find somebody else to be a punt returner because we don't want to subject him to those hits. But I don't think he's that right now, especially when you have 3 wide receivers in front of him that are more known quantities, sure thing. So I think you talked about it. He's definitely competing with competing, quote unquote, with KJ Hamler. But because of the special teams return ability, I mean, shoe in, you can morph Montreal Washington and KJ Hamler to one player, hopefully a healthier player. That's Mims in this team and very safe. I don't know who he's competing with other than how high up he is. Who he's competing with is the guys above him. What's the snap distribution and where's he at between Sutton, Patrick, and Judy this season?
Yeah, that's the big thing. Seems like Tim Patrick's one of the more safe receivers. Seems like they like him. I don't know if maybe it's because he got no trade offers because he's coming off of injury. Maybe that's a little bit of it. But I could definitely see Mims taking a few snaps from Sutton and Tim Patrick. I don't think he's going to take many from Jerry Jeudy because I think they do view Jeudy as their number 1 wide receiver. It's why they were wanting a first round pick and more for a trade this year. That's why they were not willing to lower that offer because they view him as a very good player. And so I think he'll get some run on offense just because, again, he's a playmaker. He's got speed. And when you can add those kind of things, and he just opens things up for everybody else. I kind of hated a little bit of his time at Oklahoma because they had so many weapons and they spread it out so much. He didn't really get a chance to be featured a whole lot. But, this last year actually was his first chance of really getting featured more than anything else. But again, he opens things up for a lot of other players too.
Yeah, absolutely. And got to ask you your favorite pick of this the actual draft. We're done mocking. 2024 mocks coming soon. I saw Cooper DeJean was mocked to Iowa, so that's a lot of fun. But your favorite pick and who you think is the most likely to start this year. You kind of talked about it, but just, bow on our whole conversation today before we wrap it up now that we're at an hour and 8 minutes. Sorry, Chad, 45 minutes sometimes is not enough.
Yeah. No, favorite pick, Drew Sanders. I think he's got the highest ceiling of any player for the Broncos. Again, just the playmaking ability, having 9.5 sacks from an off-ball linebacker spot. Arkansas did a great job of really playing him to his strengths this last year, and having that kind of player, it's unique in the NFL to have a guy that can really come downhill that way, make plays, tackles for loss in the backfield, all those kind of things. And I still think because he's learning the position, this guy really is the limit of what he could bring to the field with his size, length, and playmaking ability. So that was definitely my favorite pick. Player I think is going to get the start, Riley Moss. I talked about it earlier. I just think he's smart enough to really pick up the NFL quickly. If the Broncos kept the old coaching staff and Damari Mathis was playing in the exact same system, same language, everything, I would give him the nod ahead just because, not having to learn the playbook and learn how to play in the NFL, all those kind of things. But because they're on even playing field when it comes to the playbook, I'm going to give the nod to Moss here.
A lot of fun, man. Good class, good breakdown today. I'm excited to see how all these battles play out. So maybe next week we'll have to really break down Adam Troutman since we're already at an hour and 10. And Ernie Mays comes in and says, all 6 will start. Well, there's 5 unless you're talking about Troutman as well. But heck, man, that would be a hell of a draft haul. One of the reasons that a lot of people are ranking this Broncos class so low is because the volume of picks is so low. And typically you see 50% of picks hit relative to their draft slot, if that. So, I mean, relative to the draft slot, obviously. So we'll see. But if the Broncos hit on 4 of these 5 guys and they end up being starters, that would be a incredible one. I mean, you go back to the Broncos drafts the last 10 years, typically you see 1 to 3 really hit. So, right. I mean, 6 with the volume of picks the Broncos had, that would be arguably more impressive than what the Broncos even did with that 2021 draft class. So we'll see how it plays out, but a lot of fun. Carl, always fun to talk about you. Make sure you guys are following us on Twitter. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Carl's at Carl Dumler MHH. Also, make sure you're following us at BTB _ pod. Of course, sometimes it's BFB one, but it's BTB _ pod out there, as well as at Mile High Huddle for all of our content. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle, and facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. If you haven't done so yet, join us after the fact. Find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Scroll down, leave us a 5-star review and rating. We really would appreciate that. And as the ticker says underneath here, please subscribe, like, and share over on YouTube. It's the number one thing you can do to help us out besides the generous super chats, which we had plenty of today. Mike Givens coming in here, Gary Leeds Palmer, of course, Phil McLaughlin, you're the guy. We also had a big generous one from Seth Harmon. If I'm forgetting anybody, I apologize. We had Dirt Boy 789, I believe, as well, 6789. So you guys are great. Thank you so much. Carl, any final thoughts before we wrap up this long show today? Hopefully you were still keeping it going. It's not like as long as our 7-hour and 30-minute one we had going on Saturday. Richard Miles also coming in. Thank you so much, Richard. But yeah, any final thoughts?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, this kind of actually feels pretty short now. But no, just I like this draft class. I think there is a path to a lot of these guys getting a lot of playing time and being real impact players for the Broncos this season and beyond. And I'm not quite as optimistic as Ernie, but I do feel really good for what the Broncos had coming into this draft. I feel like they really did maximize this draft pretty darn well.
Yeah, proof will be in the pudding, right? We'll find out when the time comes. But overall, I think they did a pretty good job, and good job breaking it down today, Carl. It's going to be fun to watch these guys. We'll see you guys later. We'll see you tomorrow morning on Scott and I's channel, Coast to Coast Football, and Mile High Huddle will be back tomorrow. But until then, make sure you guys are continuing to choose kindness and compassion, as I always like to say, and go Broncos.